Welcome everyone. Today I have Marie with me. I just realized that I have no idea how to pronounce your last name there.
Well, officially, there is no way to pronounce it because I made it up. It's not actually my last name, but when I do say it out loud, it kind of sounds like Delafont.
Delafont. Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
do what you want. I don't care.
It's always these types of things, and especially pronunciation for me, I struggle with that
Hmm.
should go through my mind, and then it comes up, and I go, "Oh wait, that's something I should have thought about earlier." This is
People
why
like it real, man.
I know.
Keep it real, man.
This is why I usually don't do live things. This is like me branching out.
I
So, please, so you have a bunch of different projects you work on. Tell us
do.
about them.
Sure. Wow. You know what? Like, I kind of feel like I should be making some kind of like organizational chart and be putting on my wall here because I don't even remember everything that I'm doing sometimes. Um,
That's a
but
mood right there.
yeah, so one of the things I'm doing is I am the manager for Dave Warnock of the Dying Out Loud speaking tour. He's a former pastor, former Christian, now atheist, who is actively dying and or like I don't know how he puts it, but he was diagnosed with ALS and he will die from ALS. But he's on a speaking tour talking about living and dying as an atheist and finding meaning and purpose in the moments of life. And so I teamed up with him about a year ago when he got the diagnosis. And since I was kind of already connected in a network of podcasters, I got him on a lot of platforms to talk about his message. And so he and I travel the nation, and we were going to be traveling the world this next month, but COVID-19 has put a kibosh on that, which is fair and right for the collective to do that. So that's what I do with Dave. It's volunteer work. And then in addition to that, I quit my job last fall in order to pursue self-employment, which looks like being a virtual assistant. So I have a couple of clients like Dr. Marlene Weinell, who wrote Leaving the Fold and developed the term religious trauma syndrome. And yeah, so I work with her and support her efforts. And I have another client as well who's less related to this kind of secular movement, but they keep me busy. It's fun, it's interesting. And then in addition to supporting other people's brands and initiatives, I have my own shit that I'm working on, which I happen to think is even more interesting.
No bias there at all.
No, well, it's true, and I feel really good about saying that because in the
Good.
past, like it's always helped someone else. It's always lift someone else up. It's always they know better than me, especially as someone who's raised female in this culture. It's
Right.
always about elevating someone else's voice and opinion. Um, but in this last year, I've been like realizing I really like what I'm saying the most. And
Love
that feels
it.
amazing. Yeah. And so I'm gradually trying to put more weight into the work that I'm doing myself. And that involves um, the podcast called Everyone's Autonomous. And it's a kind of a spin-off of the show Everyone's Agnostic that had been a podcast for 5 years, which I co-hosted for the last year. And that really developed my voice and my strength and my self-confidence. And so when Cass Midgley decided to end the podcast last September, I started my own, Everyone's Autonomous, which is not like any old, as if there's tons of them, any old podcast about deconversion. It's
Ye
like,
old
okay,
deconversion podcast.
you know, the classic deconversion podcast, dime a dozen. But like I think they're super valuable and there's a lot of them out there and I don't want to be them. Like I'm very much concerned about the next steps after kind of coming to terms with the loss of your faith. Now, how do we deconstruct this shit that we're still holding on to? Because I think people put so much emphasis on the deconversion itself as the major trauma and the experience, which is true. And now we still have this big life ahead of us. Now, how do we kind of clean it up from all this bullshit that's still weighing us down, all this trauma that's still weighing us down. How do we become part of the human race? How do we realize that we are biological beings and change our perspective of the world and see ourselves as part of one species? So I'm very much focused on that, and in my emphasis in all of my messaging is about autonomy. And I think autonomy and the collective are completely synonymous, because if I'm autonomous, then so is everyone else. And if everyone else is autonomous, then I want to help them. And so that creates a collectiveness stemmed from autonomy. So I like talking about that kind of thing
Fascinating
on my show.
perspective. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think they completely work together, the individual and the collective. So I like to talk about that on the show, and I like to have as many diverse voices as possible, because I've been really disappointed with the atheist movement. No offense to you, though I don't know what your gender identity is, but there's a lot of white men, a lot of white men, a lot of straight cis white men, and I really want to hear more voices. And I know that I'm mostly straight cis woman, so like there's more variety that I want to hear, and I want to use my platform to elevate those voices and to challenge us all in the way that we view the world, and how to support the collective, and how to support the autonomy of other folks who are being repressed by this culture that we are still upholding, whether we are believing in God or not. So
I
that's
love it.
exciting shit, right?
And I have to say that I thought that I escaped most of the issues from religion, because I got out pretty early.
Did you?
Like, for a while I thought that the worst thing was that I'd just have random religious hymns pop in my head at random times. I'd be thinking, why the hell am I singing Hail to the Prophet all of a sudden? That's
trauma.
Come on. But I thought that was the lightest of it. But
yeah,
it is strange as it sounds for me, like, after getting married and all that, I realized that I'm actually bi about a year ago.
Oh, really?
And it was just so bottled and forced down because of the religious past and an upbringing, and I had no clue. It like slowly snowballed, and I realized, oh, there's this whole other side of me that I had no idea existed. So only recently have I discovered some of that. So I think it's worth talking about and bringing up, and I think that in a lot of ways the religious background and the trauma from that is obvious, and in a lot of ways it can be very, very subtle.
Yes. Yeah. And it varies from person to person entirely. Yeah. And that's really exciting stuff, that, whether, even one day we decide we don't believe in God anymore, it's not like the next day we suddenly understand everything and all paradigms shift and we suddenly recalibrate to a worldview that is completely based in a lack of an evidence for a God. There's still so much active conscious work to deconstruct how we've been fed a view of the world and a view of humanity. And like, don't even get me started about white supremacy, but like, and it's not just those white dudes with the shaved heads either. Like, we all have it inside of us. I have it inside of me. I see it all the time, and like, that's some shit. Like, okay, great, you don't believe in God anymore. Hooray! How about let's talk about
high five.
I know, high five for you. Pat on the back. But like, what about some more? Let's go a little bit further, and let's deconstruct racism. Let's deconstruct ableism, and let's go to some intersectional feminism and see what else needs to be pulled apart. And I fucking love doing that shit. It's exciting to me, and it feels like what makes life worth living for me is to question everything, deconstruct everything, be curious as possible, and stop assuming shit. So that's a lot of what I do on my podcast, and I've been dabbling in YouTube as you've been doing YouTube. I'm kind of dabbling because it's kind of fun. It's a little bit easier. Like, I don't have to really edit afterwards, which is nice. And
I'm so jealous. My editing takes so long.
Oh, you edit? Oh, well, that's the thing. Like, I do mine live.
Yeah, I'm not good live, so that's why I'm doing live things now. It's great.
Oh, you're doing, see, like, if you were doing live right now, this is perfect. This is wonderful content.
Oh, just wait. I have a particularly good skill of tripping over every single word that comes out of my mouth.
See, bitch, that's just called fucking humanity. Like, don't censor out your humanity. Oh yeah, that's bullshit. Bullshit. I call you bullshit. That's bullshit. But
I
anyway,
accept.
this isn't about I won't. I'm not going to attack you on your show.
All right, we can put the claws away. I'm just kidding. No, I think that
Yeah,
that's a very valid uh, criticism for sure.
it's not a criticism. It's just something I've learned from myself. Like I'm just sick and tired of feeling like I have to be perfect
Oh
to
yeah,
put shit because no one else knows what they're doing.
and that's definitely
Like,
something I put on myself. Is I expect
yeah.
this ridiculous level, not a question.
See, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Like, yeah, you don't believe in God anymore. High five. Also,
Woo!
let's deconstruct your perfectionism and the standard that you hold yourself to please who? Who? Like, God? There's no God. Like, so who are we trying to please? Like, let's just fucking live. Like, put your shit out there, you know? I'm just so excited. I'll calm down now.
I know, I love it. I mean, this is a major segue from what I intended to talk about, but I also wanted this good conversation and humanity brought in everything. So, since we've been on
Always.
such a high, let's just completely destroy that and talk about the shit that's going on.
So, how about a pandemic?
Exactly, and quarantine and being stuck at home.
Hmm.
I know that, at least for myself, and I'm sure people that are listening to my, hopefully, what will be many interviews with this, will get sick of me saying that I already have anxiety. It was something that I dealt with daily, and I had a whole plethora of different coping mechanisms that I would do. And with quarantine, with being stuck at home, I lost many of those. And so I know that I struggled, and I went to the lowest low I've been at for a long time. And I'm not out of that yet. And that's okay. Um, but I also want to hear your experience, what things were like for you. I mean, I know your job is virtual, which might really help things. What how has everything been for you? How's the transition to life at home?
What I think is beautiful to express about how to cope with a pandemic or this pandemic is that I don't feel like there's a really succinct, clear narrative to tell about how to cope. It's dirty, it's messy, and if someone wanted me to write a story about how I'm handling COVID-19, no editor would touch it because it doesn't have, like there's no clear story. Like it's just like you just wake up every day and find out what you're going to be dealing with. Like in the morning, like last week, I was waking up every morning and I was so depressed, like I could feel it in my head, just this fullness, this like heaviness, and my mood was just felt weighed down. And I would wake up in the morning and be like, this again? Like this fucking again? Like 4 more weeks until potentially the shelter in place is lifted, and who knows if that's going to be extended further. And like I was, I've had some really fucking tough days, and I don't know when they're going to show up. Today's not one of those days so far, but last week I had a pretty good handful of them right in a row. One of which I just spent in bed all day, just like watching TV because I couldn't stand to be with my mind. Um, Today, I got up on time and showered and put on makeup and like went for a walk and got things done and was productive. And now I'm here and I'm talking to you. And I plan to read and journal after this. And like, this is a better day. And I just, like I said, like, there's no really strong story arc because this is real life. This is a stress beyond what this generation has experienced, to my knowledge, and on such a global level, on such it's hitting so many different what's the word for it? Where like doesn't matter if you're poor, doesn't matter if you're rich, it's striking all of us.
It's a ubiquitous experience. It's
Thank you,
no matter
ubiquitous.
who you are, it affects you.
Right. And at the same time, it needs to be acknowledged that those who have more privilege are probably having a much better go at coping with it. Maybe not
Definitely.
emotionally, but at least financially and like their the amenities that they have access to. So that needs to be acknowledged for sure. But apart from that, we are all in this together, apart from that huge caveat, of course, but we're all affected. And I feel really grateful that, or not grateful, because there is no God, there's no one to be grateful to, but I see the advantage. I see the advantage of that I've been given by what I've gone through in life. I can see why people say grateful. That's just a lot of words right there. But I, like you, I had a panic or have had an anxiety disorder and panic disorder, eating disorder, just a lot of shit I've dealt with in the past that started very early on in life and that I started getting treatment for like 17 years ago. And I've been more or less in therapy for 17 years. And it's been really fucking hard. And at the same time, like, I've heard other people say this too, but they
Uh-oh.
prepared for this. Their whole life has felt like a pandemic in their chest. You know what I mean? Like people who struggle with anxiety and panic have been feeling that pandemic all of their life. And
Yep.
so like this doesn't feel like a whole lot different. And in sometimes people would say like I feel like I've been preparing for this my entire life.
Oh, definitely.
Like for a
And
disaster, because
and
that's how it feels.
I think the thing is that at least I find myself turning to YouTube and I mean in my case Twitch because I'm a nerd and I own that shit.
Yep.
Like I'm turning to these content creators a lot just as kind of a distraction sometimes, which isn't healthy. I mean, I'm I'm in school to be a psychologist. I know that the things I'm doing are not healthy, and then I find myself doing them, and then I just get angry at myself. But that's besides the point. And
There's,
that's actually kind of why
go
I
ahead, go
want
ahead.
to do this because I want to have this area where people can hear and go, okay, this is like everyone is experiencing this. Everyone has their own trials and things they're going through. Because I feel like even though we're all more isolated than at least my history, I don't think the world has experienced something like this in at least a very long time, especially with modernization and travel and how quickly things can spread is new. Um, but with this isolation, I almost want to provide a space where people can feel support, like get connected, even though we're completely apart and usually stuck at home.
Yeah. And it sounds like part of what you're doing is normalizing
Definitely.
um, whatever it is that people are going through, because there is no normal. Everything is within the normal range
Exactly.
right now. Because we're all going, like, there's a lot of articles right there right now about like grief, that we are all experiencing a grief, a loss, a trauma. Like we're all collectively being traumatized right now.
Yeah.
And um, that helps to know. And it helps, for me, it helps because at least in the point that I am right now in my life, I feel a lot of compassion and love for myself, which honestly, I was talking to my husband about it the other day and I was like, how new is that, honey? When is the last time that I, with no sarcasm at all, said to myself, I fucking adore you? Because I say that every day now. I'm like, oh my God,
Yes.
Marie, I love you so much. You're so cool. And it's not even narcissist, it's just like, you're just an amazing human, along with everyone. And anyway, but point being, that's like a relatively new thing for me, like in the last, I don't know, half a year or something, after a full lifetime of hating myself, and I'm 38. So that's a lot of years of hating yourself. And point being, though, that I think something that gives me an advantage or helps me cope better with all of this, is that I do love myself. And so when I recognize that I'm going through trauma, that I'm going through grief, that my behavior is complicated and strange, and sometimes I'm going on Twitch. No, I don't really go on Twitch, but I'm just saying, like, sometimes I'm gonna do
How dare
shit
you
like,
bait me?
I'm just hooking you up so that you see yourself in the story, so that you can find yourself at the happy rainbow at the end, full of a pot full of coins that say, I love myself.
That's fool's gold. This is a lie.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's not fool's gold. No, it's not a lie.
Couldn't help myself.
But I think
Please
that,
continue.
like, if if you can get into a space, and I don't know how it took me years to get there, but like to move towards a space of loving yourself, and it's not some kind of bullshit white girl witchy love. Like I never understood that. Like you deserve love or any like gross. Like I appreciate who I am. I look at the choices that I've made in my life. I see my values. I see my integrity. I see my strength, and I'm like, how could anyone look at this and not be like, holy shit, she's amazing? And I feel the same way about every other human. That's the other thing about the whole you deserve love bullshit. So does everyone. Everyone is beautiful because we are human beings. And so, anyway, point being, I just like to rant about that. But point being that self-love, even though I hate that term, is really helping me to get through this, because I wake up and I watch and I see how I feel. Like I said, like last week, I felt like shit. And I woke up and I was like, I feel like shit. And in the past, I would have been like, you fucking dumbass. Like, why can't you get yourself out of the bed? Like, you need to push, you need to try harder. This is not good for you. And like shaming stuff that would even come from, I also have a psychology background. I have a BA in psychology, and that kind of stuff would come from that. Be like, oh, I know I'm not supposed to do this. I know I'm not supposed to blah, 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 blah. Like some people I've heard in my life.
And that's it, it's a cycle, right? Because once you start doing that, you just get on
Yeah.
yourself, and it feeds in. It's a mess. I feel like in some cases, like, oh, I'm learning all this psychology stuff. Awesome. That's not exactly helpful for me yet. No, once I'm
Yeah.
better in a mental health way, then cool, I can use this to my advantage. But sometimes it's like, oh, no, I recognize that as bad, but I'm not healthy enough to go.
But it's not bad.
It's okay to make the
It's not bad.
mistake, right?
So I still think that this is relevant to COVID-19. This whole like, am I doing the right thing? If I wake up and I cry all day, or if I wake up and I'm on Twitch all day, if I wake up and I do XYZ all day, is that bad? Like, did I fuck up? Did I do something bad? Because there is no good and bad anymore. Like, there is no God. Like, there is no good and bad. There are just choices and consequences, and then there's the ability for you to look at the results, the outcomes of a behavior, and to decide whether you like that outcome or behavior, and decide then if you would like to try to behave differently in the future for a different outcome. Like, fuck good and bad. Fuck it. Like, we are just complicated, beautiful, emotional apes who all have these brains that work. Like, the psychology thing can help. Like, if you can, it's just, psychology is the study of apes and how apes think and how they behave and what their brains are like.
I hope
So
you
we're
know
just learning.
I'm completely stealing that from you, and that's just gonna be a phrase that I spit out now. I really like that.
Absolutely. I think there's so much freedom in centering your worldview around recognizing yourself as part of a species, as part of an animal. Like, you are an animal. So, like, apes don't beat themselves up because they were depressed all day or something. Like, scientists who are watching apes in the wild or whatever, writing in their little notebooks, like, what are they fucking writing? Are they like, oh, like, Zuba, I don't know what they call the apes, but like Zuba got really depressed because, I don't know, her baby was killed or whatever. It's getting really dark now, but like she got really depressed because her little baby ape was eaten by an alligator. She really needs to get over it. Like, she needs to like move on, make a new baby. Like, no scientist is writing that about apes and their behavior in the wild. Like, why would we criticize ourselves so harshly for being the same kind of animal. You know, we are just animals. And I find that to be completely liberating. And like I said, I do still feel like this is completely relevant to COVID-19 because a lot of us are home. We're stuck at home. We're stuck alone. We're stuck with people we don't want to be with all the time. We have a lot of time with our thoughts, and we have a huge traumatizing thing happening over all of us. And that can really trigger a lot of really dark thoughts and a lot of behavior that we wouldn't normally do, which we're going to end up criticizing ourselves about. But fuck that. Like, wake up, find out where you're at, do your best with it. And not just in the pandemic. Like, this is a great excuse to experiment with it, but like, this is life shit for me. Like, I deserve, no, fuck deserve. There's no deserve, there's no God. But
I love these reminders are amazing.
There's no God. There's no good, there's no bad, there's no deserve, there's nothing. It's just live. Just live and do your best and be kind to yourself because there is nothing to be judged against.
Right.
We're just here. And I find that to be very liberating and something that's helping me wake up, see how I feel, and walk with it. So if what I feel like looks like slumping to the ground and just kind of crying for the day, I'm there for it because that's what my biology is feeling right now. That's what my neurons are feeling right now. That's what my hormones are doing right now. This is what my system, this is what my machinery is telling me is going on inside right now. I don't care what you think, mind. We are going to go with what the body is saying. And if it needs to slow down and be sad and depressed, if it needs to withdraw from other people, I can do that. It's not bad. And I stay with it until I'm done. And if I do that, it usually passes in a couple of days. If I just let myself feel what I'm actually feeling instead of resisting it, trying to slow it down, trying to stop it, I am what I am, right?
100%. And I think that's something useful to point out. And I think it's probably going to come up in almost every interview I do, this idea that you should let yourself feel the emotions, whether it's anger, sadness, anxiety, fear, whatever it is. Almost the worst thing you can do is try to deflect it or run from it. Because you're experiencing that for a reason. And I always have this idea that your emotions are always valid. Even if the thinking behind it isn't rational, the emotions always are valid. Like, right. You are always valid as a person. And that's something that, I feel weird as a guy saying this, but I also like to own up to it, that I feel a lot.
Yeah.
So I would probably once a week cry in the car driving to universities or my job or whatever it was, because sometimes things would get overwhelming. And sometimes I felt like it was for no goddamn reason. I'd suddenly be overwhelmed and I'd just be like, well, I guess we're crying in the car now. But that's something that I haven't really done during this time.
Yeah.
I think it's almost easier with the extra stress and everything to try and distract yourself more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ugh.
And there's a balance to be had, right? Like,
definitely, because you don't want to wallow.
Right. There's moderation, and it takes practice to figure out what that looks like. Because, I feel like if you truly, truly sit with your feelings and let them be what they are, I feel like they will pass. I feel, on average, that you can trust yourself. And that you can trust your process, and this whole fear of like, oh, if I do that, then it's going to go out of control. If I let myself be in this depression today, then it'll never stop. I have to fight it. And I think that's a legit concern, but I think statistically, if you could chart it, I feel like it'd be a minor possibility contingent on the full engagement of that feeling that you have.
This just made a connection in my mind. Have you ever done meditation?
It's complicated. Yes, I have done it. I have issues with it, but go on.
Oh no, that's fine.
Okay.
I do meditation all the time. That was like something I had in my schedule as mindfulness meditation to just kind of reset. And almost how I'm thinking of dealing with these emotions is similar to mindfulness meditation, as you let them be there, you acknowledge them, and they will pass. They will on their own go. Like, you don't want to engage with it too much, as in just hyper focus on it or completely turn it away. You want that interaction and that experience to happen, and then letting it go on its own.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that does require a level of trust in yourself, definitely.
Yeah, and I always am trying to find new ways to describe how to look at ourselves that don't involve some kind of language around deserve or good or bad or whatever. And one of the ways that I like to describe how I show up for myself in my cognition and my emotions is, and really how I make choices in life, is there is no God, there's no big man in the sky who knows what I'm supposed to do and tells me what I'm supposed to do, and if I do it wrong, then I'm wrong. But instead, I feel like my ego, which is my consciousness, my executive functioning, what most people call I, is a scientist that is doing experiments on machinery that she was given, that she has no idea how it really works. She just kind of shows up and she's just doing experiments to figure out, like, well, if I do this, how does that feel? Or like, sometimes the machinery will give her messages, but she never really got a manual for it. So she sees these blinking lights that say trauma, trauma, trauma. And she's like, well, I don't know what to do. Like, the scientist, if we're looking at it as an altruistic, lovely scientist, as we like to imagine them to be, but I'm sure there's evil ones too. I'm imagining that she's just loving this machine because she knows it's so beautifully complex. She knows that she's not going to be able to understand how it works entirely, but it's a fun experiment to figure it out, how this works, and to try something and see what kind of output you get on the screens. Like, did all these, blinking lights kind of calm down finally? Or like, oh, are they still really bad? Oh, okay, let's try this thing and adjust that thing. It's just one big science experiment. There's no good or bad. There's just looking for a better outcome, looking for the outcome that I would like. And so I feel like that's how I see myself now, instead of this good, bad bullshit. And so when feelings come up, like this morning, I was watching that video that John Krasinski did about the good news. He made some kind of YouTube video sharing.
I have yet to watch those, and I really should.
It's meh. See, that's the thing. Like, well, for me, right? Like, I'm one ape, but I watched. I started watching the beginning of it, and I'm like, let's see how long he can keep my interest going. And I get in the habit now of like watching my mind when I'm just doing stuff like this. And I was watching my mind, and I'm like, oh yeah, my mind's really disengaged. It's not really like, it's not like needing to feel anything right now. It's not excited about this. But I kept watching just a little bit longer, and like then he showed some clips of like people honking their horns and flashing their lights for the medical professionals and like the hospitals near them, and just making a big noise and like just show their, and I'm getting like goosebumps even now just thinking about it. And I started crying, and I wasn't in that space just like 30 seconds before. And then those clips just like brought it up for me. And I watched it, and I was like I watched my machine, and I was like, oh, okay, we're feeling this. Okay. So like, again, like a science experiment, I'm just watching to see what's happening with my machinery. And I'm like, oh, I'm really moved by this. I'm really moved by the show of solidarity from the entire population for the heroes of COVID-19, who include medical professionals, which include grocery store workers, which include warehouse folks who are making toilet paper. It includes a lot of folks. But I'm only just saying that just because I just noticed how subtly my emotions shifted, and that I was just able to watch it and be like, oh, my machinery doesn't really care. Oh, now my machinery is very, very moved and weepy, and that's okay. Like, I might have judged myself in the past and been like, oh, you're so manipulative. What's the word? Easily manipulated.
Yeah, that sounds, because I was trying to think of
Manipulable.
manipulatable. I don't know.
I'm just gonna go with manipulable.
Perfect.
I was
And
so manipulable. You're welcome.
no, I love this idea of your brain and essentially everything that's not executive functioning as machinery, because that's really what it is. I mean, you don't have any control over that. It just kind of does things. And I like the idea of saying that it's a scientist, because everyone's machinery is going to be different. And so, I might watch the same thing and feel absolutely nothing for the honking and the solidarity with medical workers, though I probably would. I mean, I'm not a complete monster. But in the back of my mind, I'd be thinking, I mean, this is awesome, but I wish we could actually have them have a living wage. Like, whether you're a grocery store worker or a warehouse worker or whatever else, I think that's something that I would really hope that continues after all this, is that we now know all of the essential workers.
Yeah.
And the people that really hold society up. And I want people to remember that. I mean, not to get like political, but to get political, shit needs to change.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ugh, kills me.
Yeah. The people I live with, I have my partner who I'm married to. I have my housemate. We rent a room to him, and then my editor, my podcast editor, who has a broken ankle. He's been living with us for about a month and a half. A good portion of them, when we end up talking about this stuff, tend to engage in language that's very idealist. And that's another thing that I have really strong opinions about. I think idealism is good in so much as porn is good, because porn is a fantasy, and so is idealism. I broke
Yes,
him.
that is amazing. Oh my god.
It's true though. It's true, because it's a fantasy. Porn will always be a fantasy. Porn will always be a fantasy.
Definitely. And there's
so
issues
is idealism.
when people don't think it's a fantasy, then there's issues.
Yeah. But if you know what porn you like, if you know what fantasy you like, you're drawn towards it, but you can never get there because it's a fantasy, but you can move towards it. So it gives you an arrow. But releasing the idealism, releasing the things that you can't control, and focusing conversations on practical things that you can do, because this has just been nagging at me for years now, of like, mostly again cis white straight men that get into these like jerk off competitions where they're like, yeah, well, I think it should be this way, and we should elect that guy because I think that we need to have socialized this and socialized that. And I'm like, I know, and I want a pony, like I really do, but like, and it's not that those ideals are wrong, but like, I just personally don't understand like sitting and like jerking off to each other's ideals and then not talking about how are we going to do that, or how are we contributing to the problem? Like, what are the practical things that we can do? And that's a hard conversation to have, and I'm not surprised that people aren't having it.
Yeah,
because that requires you to do something other than to preach about what you think is good without having to show up and do anything about it.
Yep, that's where the difficulty lies. And
yeah.
That is probably why less people show up for that conversation.
Right, and so I'm thinking about like, I hope this doesn't come off as like me ripping you apart for saying what you just did about the idealizing that we should treat these folks better. I absolutely agree. I do really, really, really hope that that's an outcome of this, that people's perspectives are shifted, and perhaps people will start supporting a higher minimum, a livable minimum wage, they will start respecting folks who are doing this work. I do hope so. I do expect that they do. I know I fucking do. And I see it already though. That's the other thing. I already see it happening. That like people are being much, much kinder. Like I'll talk to someone at a grocery store or a restaurant when I pick up food, and I'll be like, thank you so much for working, thank you for being open. And they'll be like, you're welcome. I'm glad to be here. It's really nice because people are really friendly and everyone's thanking us for working, and and they're leaving really big tips. And so like even straight out of their mouths, they're saying like that they're receiving a lot of recognition and gratitude financially, emotionally, and that makes me feel fantastic. Hopefully people will keep this in mind. I think hopefully people also will realize the importance of local government over federal government right now, because Trump, and yes, I will get political, Trump has fucked up, but nobody expected that, clearly.
I know
However,
that came out of left field.
I know, right? Surprise, she's left. But like, I mean, Cuomo's doing a fantastic job in New York. Our governor in Minnesota, Governor Walz, is doing a really, really great job, and I feel really proud of my state. Um, and a lot of other governors are doing fantastic work. Even in my city in Minnesota, they some people got together and put up like this sign-up sheet that if you had any kind of assets or things that you could offer to help people with, you sign up on a sheet and say what you're capable of giving, and then other people can sign up and say what they need. So like if you have a lot of extra food that you can give away, like this sheet helps kind of like get people matched up with each other. And this is something that's happening at the city level. And like shit like this is the stuff I want to focus on, because I fucking voted in the primaries for the presidential election. I will fucking vote in the presidential election. I don't know what other kind of control that I have over the situation. And so then I start looking down a little bit closer to see what's happening in my immediate vicinity, in my neighborhood, in my city, in my state, because those are things I can be involved in physically, even.
Definitely.
You know, and there's great ways to help people around us now.
And there's big importance in that. So yeah. I actually live in Utah, and I am in one of the very few areas without a stay-at-home rule.
Oh, really? They haven't put one in place yet?
They have not put one in place.
Wow.
But I mean, at the same time, I'm out of work because I am in a risk group, and other people in the household are in a risk group. But so my wife and I are both out of work for that reason. The company we work for is only financially helping if you get the virus. Mm. So combine that with the non-stay at home, and I'm just being punished for trying to stay safe, essentially. Yeah. And so exactly, it makes me look at things and go, what can I do? Like now, I haven't really cared about local politics before, and I will own that, and this is definitely showing that it plays a huge factor, and you can see that with New York, with other states, and the decisive actions that they've done that the federal government should have been prepping for months, that have made a huge positive change. Definitely.
Yeah.
So because there's so many different changes, and I feel like it took, and it's still going on, but it took a long time to start to get a feel for how life is after quarantine, after just the massive change. So what are some, personally for you, positive things that have changed? I'll give one. I won't use the same one. I will mention it though. I now have more time, and so I'm doing things like latte art, which I was not able to do before. Which is fun. Like I'm letting myself do things that I think I deemed myself as silly for doing before, that, just give me satisfaction, that give me joy. So why the hell would I not do that? Also, I'm able to spend much more time with my wife, with my dogs. I'm training my dogs all the time. Like I'm cuddling with every human and puppy in the household way more, and I love that because I get so much from physical affection. I'll just sit and hold someone or hold a dog, and that just makes my day. And I'm able to do that so much more, and I'm giving myself time, even though I still have schoolwork and things. I'm giving myself time more time for me than I think I've allowed myself in a long time.
Yeah.
That's been a very positive personal change for myself. I don't know
That's
if you've
amazing.
experienced something similar because of these
I
changing
mean,
situations.
honestly, like I don't know that I have in the same way, because the transition that I think a lot of folks that are going through, like similar to what you're experiencing, which I think is a forced slowing down, um, reaping benefits for someone's state of mind, and a recalibration or an acknowledgement of what's important. I think I already went through that last year, when I ended up quitting my job and started working with Dave and doing my thing. That happened for me then. And so I guess, I don't know, some positive things I feel are a lot of, I think my confidence is really, really sky high right now, if it wasn't already super clear.
Yeah, no, I never, ever would have guessed that.
No, like I feel really, really proud of myself because me and my partner share finances, and we have since like for 10 years or so. And over the years, I've made as many financially positive decisions as possible in terms of like the house, the kind of house that we bought, the kind of house that we, uh, the kind of choices that we made in our spending, our savings behavior. Um, there's all this kind of thing, all these kinds of things we've been working on over the last 10 years. And so that led us into this position now where like, I don't know how much money I'm going to be making for the rest of the year, like, because everyone else is going to be trimming their budgets. I don't know if they have room in their budget to hire me as a coach or anything like that. But that said, like, I feel so incredibly good because we have been working really hard together to save money to have an emergency savings account. And now we have one that's about 4 or 5 months worth of income.
Nice.
I know. And I recognize how incredibly privileged that is. And at the same time, I can hold space for being really, really proud of the work that we did, that I did, really proud of myself for my diligence with that. So like I'm feeling really positive about that, like just being able to breathe right now and thanking the Marie from 10 years ago and ongoing, like thank you for all the saving and intentionality that you had with your finances to put me in this place. But again, I recognize it's really privileged and I almost hesitate in even articulating it because it just feels really tone deaf with maybe other folks who are not in that position. Yet regardless, it's still the truth for me and my family. And so I'm grateful for that.
No,
I'm grateful to myself.
I was just gonna say no, because no. Look at you.
Obi!
No, and I actually I echo that because my wife and I have something similar. We have worked and done things in a way to set up an emergency fund, and it felt a little bit weird for us, especially as being younger and going to college, and how we were choosing to do things in order to set that aside. And it almost felt a little silly because in the back of my mind, I was like, how would I not be able to get a job? Right? Like, I don't see any reason why I wouldn't be able to, like, oh, well, I'll just go work at a fast food place for a little bit while I'm searching for something better. And now here we are with no job and no option, and we have that money there. And, the thing is, it's still super stressful.
Yeah.
But I also look to our coworkers that a lot of them are living paycheck to paycheck. And that's terrifying. Like, I can't imagine the headspace I'd be in because I'm already some days just trying to keep calm. Yeah. And I'm good for a while. I have that safety net. I cannot imagine being in a spot where, you're just screwed. Like, if you have no income coming in, you were living paycheck to paycheck. I cannot imagine what life would be like.
Yeah.
And so in that
those
way,
people are working their asses off. Like,
right.
Those people work incredibly hard.
Yeah. It's humbling.
Yeah.
And that's something that I want to bring up because, hell, I'm in, both of us are in that position where we're essentially financially stable for a while, and yet still this shit sucks.
Yes. Yes. And you know what? I'm not incredibly worried about myself. When I don't know if this is where you're going with this, but like I find myself in a very, I don't know if it's a dissonance. It's just it's a tension. It's an uncomfortableness when I think about the folks that don't have the financial privilege that I have, not just because they don't have it, because that's not the story. That is too simple of a story. Most of the time, when people don't have the finances to get them through something like this, there's a lot fucking going on underneath that has to do with systemic racism, that has a lot to do with, I mean, let's just leave it there, right? Like systemic racism fucks people over. And so I find myself sitting here comfortable with my money. I don't really feel, I think that white guilt is unproductive. I recognize my privilege. I recognize everything that's in place for me to be as successful as I have been, that my race doesn't count against me. And so I recognize where I'm at and why I'm at where I'm at. And I recognize other people aren't where I'm at, and that there's reasons that out of their control for why they're there. And I ask myself, what can I do? Because financially, I can't support or donate or anything. I have to take care of my family right now. I don't have the extra money to support other folks or donate or anything. And that's hard for me because I do see it. I see it now. I see the injustice. I see the system, and yet I don't know if I take advantage. The system benefits me, and so I struggle. I've been struggling with what to do, how to help. And at the same time, as soon as I ask myself that question, I ask, what have I been doing to help? Because this is not something new. This is just everything turned up. Those who have privilege still have the same amount of privilege proportionate to those who don't, but they just have a little bit less now. And it's a feeling of hopelessness, of wanting to help and not really knowing how. And at the very least, I know that I'm going to use my voice and my platform to draw attention to those communities and those demographics, because I mean, white people for sure need to do the work of destroying a racist system. That is our responsibility. And so I just find myself reflecting on that a lot right now, reflecting on the injustices that are already in the system, that are already fucking over the same people who have already been fucked for years. And what do I want to do with that? Like, how do I want to engage with that? Not just now, not just during the pandemic, but ongoing, because the system has been in place for centuries.
For sure. And I think it's a value to bring up. And honestly, the more voices are raised against the Jordan Peterson-esque idea that, like, white males are under attack. Bullshit. Bullshit.
They are justifiably so. Like, I mean, not literally every white man, but it's just like, maybe you could step off the stage for a few minutes, maybe someone else could have a chance, maybe. I don't want to hurt your male fragility, but like, maybe it's okay to share with everyone.
To quote Bionic Dance, an OG atheist YouTuber, share and play nicely with the other kids.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah. Back to ideals, right? But like, yeah, what does that look like in practice? Like, how do we support those of us who are already disadvantaged in the system? How do we help them now? And how do we help them in the future? Because you're not going to hear about them as much after the pandemic is over. You know, when Trump got elected, we all of a sudden realized that there was a marginalized community. We're like, oh, I didn't realize racism still existed. And a lot of white people woke up, including myself. To be very frank, I have not been woke my entire life. In fact, I constantly hope to wake up more every day. There's still so much more to know and to understand. But in 2016, the whole Trump thing created a wave of white people who finally understood that the systems are still in place and they're just as terrible. Well, not just as terrible, or at least they're not slaves anymore, but it's still not okay. And I think this pandemic is going to cause another wave of that, of an acknowledgement and awareness of the disadvantaged nature of the systems that we have in place in the US. And I hope that will push people to change the practices of their life and how they treat other people and how the kinds of policies that they advocate for and the kinds of people that they choose to elect and the kinds of ideals, fantasies that they choose to navigate towards. Knowing that ideals will never become a reality, you know? And I hope people change.
But I agree with you in that it points you in a direction. Yeah. And we have to start from where we are. And even just little baby steps at a time is good, whether that's regarding just the institutionalized racism, whether that's regarding societal values and issues and cognitive dissonance about so many different things, or whether that's even your own mental health. Having a direction and making small steps, I mean, that's what everyone's going to have to do. Something that I think about sometimes, because I'm in a way better place than I used to be many, many years ago. And that I think is worth it to bring up, is that in any type of progress, you're going to have setbacks, you're going to have failures. Any type of progression, whether towards an ideal or not, it's not going to be linear. It's going to be bumpy, it's going to be rocky, things are going to go great, they're going to go horrible. But as long as the general trend is positive and is going to what you're looking for, there's still cause for celebration in that.
Yeah.
So that's a weird thing that I think with Trump being elected and all of these terrible groups that suddenly were in the media like, look, we have the president backing us. That sucked. But it was a good point of exactly as you said, a lot of people woke up and went, oh shit, this is still a thing that needs to be addressed. And for that reason, I'm actually glad that took place, because it revealed something that was to many people hidden before. But
I wouldn't use the word glad, but I could see the positive outcome and acknowledge that it's positive.
Yeah. Good point.
A little pedantic at times, but
that's fine. But I think there's something to be said of being able to celebrate the general positive progression. Shit can happen. I mean, whether it's, you know what, I woke up at a time I wanted to today, or I helped elect someone that will help bring about change in my local area, or look at this. It's not going to happen this year, but look at this amazing presidential campaign that we help support. Yeah, definitely not this year, but it's something to be said, and I think it's something that people will often lose track of.
Yeah, because I think I worry about people getting fixated on the outcome, even though I did just talk about outcomes, but like deciding their efforts based on the outcome. Like I had someone email me the other day saying that she was worried that her effort is just going to a waste, a loss, that it's not worth it anymore. And when I look at the work that I do in terms of activism, secular activism, humanist activism, I don't really care what the outcome is, because my choices aren't based on outcomes. my choices are based on my values. And I don't like, so maybe this is complementary to what you're saying, and maybe it's negating it. I don't know, but like, I don't know, but like, if the world doesn't become a better place, is it still worth fighting for? Do you need to see a positive outcome to keep going forward? Or are there other ways to know that you're on the right trajectory regardless of impact?
No, I think that it can definitely seem to negate what I'm trying to say. I'm just poor with words. What I'm meaning is, even if you're seeing a negative thing, let's say you're, because this is all about mental health. At least you're just fun to talk to, so it's derailed a bit. But I'm gonna go bring it back to mental health. If you decide you want to make a change, but then the next day you feel worse than you ever have, what I'm trying to say is that it's fine. It's fine for that to happen. It's fine to fail. It's fine to have those negative outcomes, as long as you are continually looking and trying to be better. And I think that naturally things will get better little by little. But yeah, that work and that effort through something that you feel strongly about, that's what's important.
Right, right. Because back to the scientist thing, like if we view ourselves, our ego, our consciousness as a scientist over a machine that has no manual, I like to kind of imagine the scientist like has a little hamster that they like have do like, I want to get the hamster to run to this from this part of the machine to that part of the machine and get the cheese. And I don't know if hamsters eat cheese. I assume that they do because they're small rodents, but that's not very intersectional of. But what if they don't? What if you set up the experiment, you set up the circumstances for the hamster to get to the cheese, and he doesn't? Like, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just like, oh, I wanted him to get the cheese. What happened? Like, what? It's not what went wrong, it's what variable do I need to change, if any, in order to increase the possibility that the hamster will go and get the cheese? And so that's how I like to look at, like, you make an attempt at something, it doesn't work out, your emotions get the better of you, whatever that phrase means, but you're depressed or whatever, and you didn't expect the depression, and because it's not really helping you get your thing done. Well, the hamster's not getting to the cheese. What's going on? Like, are we setting goals that are unrealistic based on our emotional state? Do we try it again tomorrow? Do I beat myself up? Fuck no. Why would you take your little hamster and beat him in the head? It's your fucking, like,
That is a mental
better.
image I did not need today.
Don't beat your hamster.
If you take anything from this, it's don't beat your hamster.
I love it. I fucking love it.
And I think it's also important to remain open. Maybe the hamster doesn't like goddamn cheese and you need something else.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's all about being realistic. Like, if it's, I mean, we're going back to like pre-pandemic, like self-indulgent goals, like, oh, I want to run a marathon. Okay, I guess I need to set up a training thing and go and do my training thing. I guess today I'll run a mile. And like you wake up and you're like, oh, I'm not going to run a mile. And so you have to ask yourself, do you actually want to run this fucking marathon? Or is there like a different trajectory that is going to be better? Like, question everything, question your goals, question how you develop your path toward your goal. Like, be flexible, because I just think, oh God, you just get me so ranty. But like,
It's what I do.
so ranty. I don't know what it is about you, but like maybe it's because you let me talk. But like, I I am so uninterested in goals nowadays. Like, it's just like I'm just gonna show up today and like, what am I feeling? Like, what do I need? What am I going towards today? And is that working for me? And like, sure, I'll set a goal like, oh yeah, I want to run a marathon. And if I'm getting into it and I'm trying it and like it's just like falling flat, like I'm not going to look at myself and be like, you stupid hamster. Like, I'm going to be like, oh,
That is now also my
something's up.
favorite insult. You hamster.
Stupid hamster. But I'll be like, oh, wow, okay, something's not working here. What's going on? Like, and evaluate, like, and be honest with yourself about like what you're thinking that's stopping you from doing that goal. And that what you're thinking might be, oh, I don't actually fucking want to do this. And I think what I'd actually rather do is blah blah blah. And like, and so then your whole world is just like a choose your own adventure thing. Like you might have a
At
an
times it's
ideal
at times it's just the shittiest choose your own adventure you've ever seen.
thing. Sometimes you die within the first few pages, and that's unfortunate.
Oh dear. No, I actually really like this because something in the back of my mind, because I'm now an atheist activist. I run a secular student alliance, which is now basically defunct because of my university shutting down and everything else. So in the back of my mind, I've been thinking, how, as like, is there a way to frame this in an atheistic skeptic frame of reference, or does that even have value? And I think the thing that coincides is questioning everything and applying that to life, because I mean, that's, at least for me, that's how I became an atheist. I just questioned everything, and I didn't get satisfactory answers from the religion I was in. And 9 times out of 10, it almost didn't even seem to attempt to answer the question or the line of thinking. That's the tie to this time, is that question your motivations, question your goals, question everything. Let yourself experiment and find the ways to get healthier, to get better, to change the system. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you already got your high five for leaving Christianity or Mormonism. You got your high five. Let's go get some more. Let's go deconstruct some more things. Let's play with our hamsters. That sounds naughty, but like,
Yeah,
let's.
that shade. Wow, who knew that the hamster would be so versatile as saying?
He's versatile. He's very versatile.
I also love how my favorite thing is tigers, and I can see an elephant behind you, and yet we're talking about hamsters.
That's it's all symbolic, really.
Well, I just took a glance at the recording and realized it's been over an hour.
Yeah, I tend to do that.
Yeah, no, that's a good thing. I just didn't realize that amount of time had passed. So I'll probably want to be wrapping this up. Is there any last point, experience that you want to share? No
I
pressure.
think,
Not that I'm
yeah,
putting you
yeah,
on the
no, no,
massive
no, no,
spot
no.
or
I can
anything.
perform. I can perform. Ready? Da, 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 da. I'm dancing. No one else can see it except for him. But
Yes.
yes, I would there to put a bow on the discussion we're having about just being apes and being gentle with ourselves, because we are beautiful, complex animals who think that we are dualistic, but we're not, and who have been fed a shit ton of lies about treating ourselves like machines that need to perform perfectly, which we don't. To help you be gentler on yourself during this time, I like to assign homework. And I gave this homework to Eric Murphy from Talk Heathen. Like a month ago, he called me and he was having some problems and he was being hard on himself, because he does that. And we all do that. And I had this brilliant idea, which I have no shame in being so psyched about, but I really like it because I think it's true. I told him that I wanted him to go to a grocery store, and this was pre-pandemic. So like,
So social distancing now applies.
Yeah, so carefully go to the grocery store, wash your hands, grab one banana from the produce section, pay for your banana, leave, drive to a park, get out of your car, wash your hands again. Just intermittently as you need to do this. I didn't have to mention this to Eric because it wasn't a thing back then. But go to a park, wash your hands, sit on a bench, open up your banana, start eating it, and just start meditating on the fact that you are an ape.
I was mildly worried this whole time, like, when is the deep throating of the banana going to come into play?
Everyone thinks it goes there. It doesn't go there. No, like...
Don't feel ashamed, no matter who's watching. Just go to town.
Just put it all in there. And even still, apes do that too. Whatever, I don't fucking care. But the point is, like, you're just an ape. You are a sweet, lovely ape that has evolved through this chaotic world of black holes and galaxies and fucking insanity. It's crazy out there. And it's just amazing that we're alive at all. And we shouldn't even be alive right now. Like, statistically, what are the odds that we are here, yet we are here? And we can feel all sorts of amazing things. We can have orgasms. We can eat food that's really delicious. Pooping can be nice. Burping is fun. Farting is fun. Talking to people, hugging, going outside in the sun. Like, there's so much about being a conscious being with senses that is fantastic. And if we can let go of our need to be something more than an ape, then I think we can find a lot of freedom in being gentle with ourselves and making decisions that are good for us and good for the collective. So if that resonates with you, I advise getting a quarantine-safe banana and doing the ape meditation.
I love it.
Yeah.
So all of your lovely speech, I'm just going to ruin from segueing off a single thing you said.
You're allergic to bananas.
Oh, no, but something you mentioned that burping can be nice. I am with you. So when I was a kid, I remember I would burp and my parents would be like, you stop burping, like, you know, controlled in some way, or you're never going to get a wife and things will be terrible. Yeah. So last night, my wife and I were having a drink. So we mixed two different drinks and we were watching just an old show, just relaxing at the end of the night. We took a big drink and at the exact same time, we just did these ridiculous burps. We just turned to each other and high-fived and we went on. And I'm like, I don't know why, but that moment for me was like, yeah, no, things are great and I'm goddamn burping with my wife. Eat shit. So thank you for your lovely point. I just had to interject my burping story.
Yeah, you completely supported my point that we are dirty beings, and if we don't shower every day, we start to stink like other animals too. We're not anything different. We're just a little bit smarter. And if we're that much smarter, we should know we don't need to be so fucking hard on ourselves.
And it's a good thing, I'm just going to say, that video calls can't transmit smell. Speaking of showers, that's my next stop.